Maxonomic, our chair sponsor here in the SPL, the most comfortable seat around, and I don't think you can do any better with your money than grabbing yourself a nice Maxonomic seat to sit on in, and unfortunately it doesn't come with the best assembly man of all time, Mifflin.
Yes, right.
And don't worry, I'm giving you props here, Miff. Go to needforseat.com, pick up a Maxonomic chair, SMITE Maxonomic chair, for yourself, and game in comfort. Why not? Mifflin, the chair assembly man, joins me. We're a plaid gang, I guess.
I'm even in uniform today.
Well, that was the same one you used to build the chair just a moment ago, right?
Yeah, it's the uniform.
So you're going to get out there and build some more chairs after we get off the desk here?
I think you buzzsawed them all up already,
That's
bud.
right. I hacksawed them all together, or whatever, however that works. Look, we had a pretty exciting first set there. The Jade Dragons maybe feeling like they're back here. They get the swift 2-0 over the Oni Warriors, Leviathans and Titans. That'll be the set we have coming up next. Titans, Valkyries, and then Jade Dragons, Bolts. That's a big one on Sunday. Final thoughts on our first set of the day, Miff. Dragons over the Oni Warriors. You think this is a Dragons team that's, quote, back?
I do think that the Dragons have certainly got something new here. I felt like, to me, they were much more established in the drafts that they were going for, but there was one main concerning factor that I had. Game 1, they were completely dominant. I'm not going to make excuses for the Warriors. I'm not going to say that the Jade Dragons looked like they were going to lose, but they were dominant for so long that it almost surprised me how long that game went. It felt like they were having a little bit of trouble closing it out, and against some teams that are feeling a little bit stronger, a little bit higher in the standings, that could spell disaster later on.
The Oni Warriors put up a bit of a fight there, gave the Dragons some trouble. All right, Tartarus Titans versus the Atlantis Leviathans. Got to take care of a little bit of business first. If you follow @SmitePro on Twitter, you've already seen this announcement. But due to reports of in-game misconduct, Julio will not be playing in today's Leviathans versus Titans set, while our admin team investigates these reports. The coach, Oxy, will be filling into the solo lane for the Leviathans, and that'll be the big change here for today's matchup. Let's sink our teeth into it a little bit further, though, Mifflin. Starting with the Tartarus Titans here, a team that, similar to the Oni Warriors, showed a big streak of winning there towards the end of Phase 1, even into the Phase 1 playoffs a little bit. Look, consistency has just been the buzzword this week, hasn't it? Where all of these teams, outside of maybe the top 3 or 4, have shown those moments. But the Titans are absolutely a team that needs to hit that buzz button, the consistency button, and get it going a little bit more frequently.
It seems like to me the Titans are a team that is doing as well as their jungler, Scary D. When Scary D looks good, the rest of the team starts to kind of glow up around him. They really start to play through him. They go for these side lane ganks, and when he looks good, Cyclone looks good. Paul looks good as well. But you got to give a little bit of credence to the performance that we've seen in recent weeks. In particular, this Kali game did not look particularly good. Scary D is at his best, in my mind, when he's playing gods like the Raven, the Osiris, the Erlang Shen, these frontliners in which he can initiate these fights, bring a little bit of that solo experience into the jungle instead of these late-game hyper carries. But once he does get the ball rolling, when he's off to a good start, he makes plays like this. He's shutting down the back line, he's finding these initiations, he's sticking around in these engagements, and that just makes the rest of the Titans look so much better.
Right, Scary D on the Loki looks good. I'm thinking back to Phase 1. The Raven, I think he played a couple of times and looked amazing on the Raven pick. It's been these flashes of brilliance from Scary D and the rest of this Tartarus Titans draft. Going to be so important for Scary D. We'll talk about Panatom here in a little bit, but talk about a difficult matchup there out of the jungle going against Panatom. Worth, I think, looking at this Kali pick, and that's something we'll discuss further when Picks and Bans starts to come around. You think we see it today?
I think we talked about it on Hunt or Not. I personally don't want to see it unless it's Tartarus Titans subbing in their coach, Terrio, and then I'd love to see it. But
that's a good point.
Outside of that, I think that Kali is a little bit better now. She doesn't have to work as hard to get her itemization, as she doesn't have to go towards those boots. But with the meta as it is and how much emphasis we've seen on early game pressure, I'm not sure Kali can live up to that.
Yeah, look, I think that's probably a little bit of Cherio whispering in Scary D's ear. Look, I'd be playing the Kali here. Maybe we pick that one up. Scary D does join me now for the pregame interview. Scary D, thanks for sitting down with me. First and foremost, you got a big matchup today up against the Leviathans. I'll springboard on what Mifflin and I were talking about just now. Any Kali today? What are we thinking?
I mean, you can't get me to give away my secrets of what I'm
That's
going to
true.
play for the match.
That is a secret strategy.
We will see. We will see. Cherry's taught me some tips, so.
Yeah, was that a Cherio kind of funded pick in the back?
No,
of the brain
it's actually all my idea. I love that character. I just played it pretty poorly. but
No,
you
that's
know,
all
I
right.
like the character.
Yeah, look, she's a lot of fun to watch, and if we see Kylie a little bit more today, maybe
We'll see.
it'll turn around for you. Look, you guys have had an okay start to your phase 2. You're 1-2 at the moment, looking to springboard forward. You looked really good, admittedly, against the Bolts. You take them to 3 games. What is the team working on at the moment? What's the main focus on getting some wins flowing here in phase 2?
Um, yeah, we're still just trying to work out on being on the same page and stuff. That's
Sure.
like it's a year-long issue, or not an issue, but something you work on as a team. It's becoming a team together and stuff, basically. But I feel like for me, what are you doing
You're
over
working
there?
on your
Every
pregame
interview.
interviews, right? That's the next thing to work on.
Yeah, that's in the works. But I feel like for me personally, I haven't played up to my expectation recently,
Sure.
and I want to step it up today. So
Yeah, look, we've seen these brilliant moments out of you, and look, I just talked about how consistency is the buzzword. I'll say it again. Once the consistency starts flowing,
yeah.
this will be a very scary team to look forward to playing against. The Leviathans, your opponents here today. What do you think it takes to beat this squad? It's an undefeated team here so far in phase 2. Do you think you guys have some answers for them?
Yeah, well, I think it's a little bit different today, right? Because
Yep.
Julio was banned for in-game conduct or something.
Yep.
Who knows what he said? But
Looking like a Titan.
Yeah. Well, they are the Titans, right?
Oh, snap!
I don't
we
know.
are the Titans.
Scary. I'll give you a break here and let the the rest of the boys they got their mind in the right place. Thumbs up, Scary D. Thanks for sitting down with me and best of
Yeah,
luck.
thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Look, Miff, we never got the official answer on what it's going to take to get the Leviathans on an unsteady foot here, because Paul starts running around in the background like a Titan, and Aurora is giving the thumbs up. Seems to be high spirits, though, for this Tartarus Titans team, and I think that's step number 1. I think the Olympus Bolts would be the first to agree with me. You foster a happy and exciting team environment, well, the wins maybe start coming down the stretch there. So let's talk about the Leviathans now. We'll focus on the jungle here for the moment. Panatom has been a driving force for this specific roster for a pretty long time. He's had these big standout performances, even in games where Panatom doesn't light up the kill feed. Seems to be the type of game where he's going to be setting up for his team in other ways. So I'll let you pick up where Scary D and Paul and Aurora kind of left off. What do you think it takes to beat Panatom and the rest of the Leviathans?
Well, they've got an easier time of it today, as they will be playing with their coach, but Panatom in particular is a player that I think is very versatile. There are 2 faces of Panatom, if you would. There's the facilitator Panatom, where he's like, all right, Shinto, what do you want me to do? Where do I stand? Am I allowed to clear these back camps, or do you want them? Whatever you need, Mr. Shinto. And then there's the Panatom who's like, oh, guys, I got first blood, so I'm just going to go ahead and run with this lead and win us the game off the back of it. He's found a couple of picks very recently that have really meshed well with his style. I'm talking the Loki, the Gilgamesh. Occasionally we see the Surket come through as well. I think that Panatom is one of the better junglers in the league in that he knows what he needs to do for his team. It's not many players that are willing to play that get down Mr. President style that he's willing to do for Shinto, and there's not many players who can shift up that style into the sole carry for your team sometimes. I think that this Leviathans draft, despite playing with their coach, is going to be able to generate enough threat that the Tartarus Titans can't come into this set thinking that it's going to be a free win.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, this is a terrifying Leviathans team, and I think the picks and bans, when we get to them for Game 1, will do a pretty good job of setting that stage and really seeing where the mindset is, how they want Oxy to play there in the solo lane, things like that for this Leviathans team. It's good, I think, Miff, that you bring up Loki. In the last 6 games, Scary D has played Loki 4 out of the last 6 games. The other 2 were Kali games. And Panatom had a Loki game in the last 6 as well, and it was 5-0-7. Could be something that ends up getting looked at here in picks and bans. Outside of the jungle, I think mid lane is going to carry a lot of weight in this matchup. Paul up against Shinto was a lot of fun to follow along with. Do you have an edge there in that matchup?
It's hard to say because they both bring so much to their teams. When you think of Paul, it's some of that Worlds performance for PK, right, where he's finding triple kills to turn around Titan defenses, where he's turning into Scylla and confirming every single objective on the map. And then you think of Shinto, and, well, this guy's usually 2 or 3 levels up because he just gets more farm, or he has great team fight presence. I think this is going to be a clash of the Titans, if you would, inside of mid, not to play around with that Titan word too much.
No, it was very apt, and it made me laugh, you pointing out Paul kind of walking around there in the background. Shinto, highest kills in the league at the moment, 1 ahead of Sanford Soccer, 1 less games played, though, than what Sanford Soccer has. 72, 13, and 99 is what Shinto is right now.
Jeez.
Feels pretty good. Averages 19,000 player damage, which actually might be towards the top of the league as well. Yeah, he's like third in the league. Benji and Nika, the only two that average more than him. Paul averages pretty highly up in the player damage charts there as well. So I think the mid lane matchup could carry a lot of weight here in this one. Picks and bans for game number 1. They'll kick off right now, and we'll see where the priority starts to lie for both of these teams. Titans will find themselves in that first pick spot. Leviathans over in the second pick slot. And I think a lot will be revealed as far as strategy for the Titans, of course, with the Leviathans playing with the coach out of the solo lane, and then the Leviathans, how they want to respond. If we want to kind of turn back the clock, the answer for the Scarabs yesterday when they were playing with the coach out of the solo lane was, I think, Xing Chen for Selene. They stuck him on that pick and just saw how things would go there in that lane. It's the type of thing where you don't want to harbor on the reasoning, but it is something now that you have to jump into game and you have to strategize for and against, and I think the Titans could look to maybe push some pressure in that lane.
I think they could. We don't necessarily know, do we, if it is actually Oxy going into the solo lane. We could see a couple of role substitutions. Just got it in for production. It is going to be confirmed Oxy playing out of the solo lane. So now we can just take a little bit more of a macro view towards this match. And Baba Yaga getting banned out makes a good deal of sense to me. If Shinto's the guy who is just going to get more farm, well, some stacking items likely going to feel good on him. I think it wouldn't be overly surprising if we see the Leviathans go ahead and target out that Loki with their last ban. Got to get rid of the mainstays. Must address that Tiamat early on, as it is the Titans in the first pick slot. But as you've already highlighted, both of these teams have put a good deal priority towards the God of Tricksters. And, well, Scary D, what was it, 4 out of the last 6 games plays the Loki? Leviathans, I know Oxy in particular, is keeping his eyes on these matches. Likely doesn't want to have to deal with that.
Leviathans now in a position where that's what they have to choose. It's the last ban now, and the Titans get pick of the litter and pick number 1. But then there's also a threat, depending on what the Titans have or haven't banned out, that the Leviathans get 2 very, very strong picks on their second wind here. So I bet there's a little gamesmanship going on with the Leviathans now as well, where ban something like the Athena, so Loki's still available, Gilgamesh is still around. A lot of those top priority picks still absolutely in that conversation. Baba Yaga was sort of interesting, but that's something we talked about on the Hot or Not segment on the SPL waiting room, and how Shinto looked pretty good on that pick, so it's something maybe we should get used to seeing a little bit further. But Raijin is what Shinto has played in the last 3 games. It's been 3 Raijin games, 3 Raijin wins, the most recent being 10-2-5 in the KDA department. So Titans doing a little bit of homework there. But Fafnir, Gilgamesh for the Leviathans. Talk about a front line, talk about initiation, plenty of setup, plenty of lockdown between those two.
Absolutely wild. I was not expecting to see Raijin in that first pick slot. As you already highlighted, has great damage, good survivability, has a phenomenal early game as well. But when there are gods like Fafnir out there that can change how your composition plays, change how you have to address the match because of the threat he has towards these neutral objectives, you'd think that maybe we'd see some priority there. Gilgamesh has been in that top ban slot for, going on 3-4 weeks now, and makes his way through. Leviathans, I'm sure, very happy with the top 2 selection here. Titans, though, have the opportunity to select back a couple of key picks themselves. King Arthur's still out there. Could see a little bit more of those Guardians on the solo lane. Loki's been available as well. Fenrir been highly prioritized and has great flex potential. Could go into the jungle, could go into solo, could even head over into that support role. Keep some guessing by locking in this Artemis, but this will give the Leviathans the opportunity to, again, target Scary D in the bans.
It was 85% pick ban rate for Fenrir, and a lot of those going over to the ban column. So agreed there, Mifflin, where this Fenrir is just seen big priority in picks bans. Opens up the door to some flexibilities you've also pointed out there. Chiron locked in here for the Leviathans. Chiron was the talk of the SPL there in the Hunter role at the start of Season 8 over in Phase 1. It was all Chiron and Bluestone, and has seen less play, admittedly, over the last couple of weeks. Still seen play, but just hasn't been quite as rabid of a reception around this Chiron. Still in a position, though, Miff, in your eyes, to make an impact on this game. Something Yarkor, I think, could play pretty well.
Yeah, I think Chiron is still in a pretty good spot. But we have recently had the Scarabs and the Bolts in studio, and I had the opportunity to talk to Zapman and Barracuda both, and they had kind of expressed a little bit of, what's the word, curiosity around Yarkor's priority here. They said, well, it is a little bit interesting that the Leviathans have been still emphasizing this old school style of Hunter. Crazy to call it old school. It's only been a couple of weeks now, but Chiron has largely gone by the wayside by the majority of these teams. Leviathan seems to be one of the few holdouts out, still saying, no, guys, it's still good. He's still got death immunity. He's still got one of the best level 2s inside of the Hunter role, and well, I think they're still right about that, but maybe doesn't really utilize the builds that we've seen from Hunters as well as Artemis or any of these attack speed sim gods. You're not generally going to be looking at the quadruple bow build with the Chiron, as you've already highlighted. It's going to be Bluestone, Transcendence. It's all about stacking up that power and using your abilities almost like a mage.
Wow, it's triple front line. Depending on how Gilgamesh builds is what it looks like here for the Leviathans. This has been a play style that's been on the rise here as of late. Couple of Guardians, someone tankier in the jungle, usually a Warrior, and that ends up feeling pretty good. There are a couple of teams in the SPL that have really forged that type of playstyle into some success. I almost got the picks bans flipped there because it was a Merlin ban against Shinto, so that's no surprise, but then a Hell ban. But Woe is right here, Mifflin. Loki falls all the way down to, what is that, 8th pick here, and then if Vamana is going to be the 9th pick for the Tartarus Titans. Interesting priority here, but looks like it could be a pretty decent draft.
And then Zhonghui as well. Wow, they saved the spice for last, didn't they? Gotta talk about Vamana and his ability to stick around inside of these engagements. Maybe not the best pick into something like a Zhonghui that is loving these elongated fights, but is going to have decent survivability, should be able to stick to this Chiron relatively well. This Terra selection is going to do a good deal of counter towards Loki, who applies dot damage out of the stealth, as well as has essentially tick damage with his flurry ability. Means that Earthern Fury is always going to be able to apply that heal, but I got to talk about the Zhonghui.
You have to.
We are looking at a 0% win rate. 0%. Not a single win so far.
Not a one.
And it's not one player.
The absence of one. Nothing.
It's not two players going towards this Zhonghui. It's not one team or two teams. It's just about every team has tried their hand at this god. And I am told, aggro, taco, they keep preaching it, it's an incredibly strong pick. Has great burst damage, has consistent damage output inside of the team fight, has great team fight presence. But I haven't seen it yet, Dave, and I'm still not going to say it's a good pick until it gets just one in the win column.
Yeah, needs a single win to convince Mifflin. I think, it's that conversation around, are teams losing because of the Zhonghui, or are they losing despite having a Zhonghui? I mean, it's kind of, I guess you could probably break down all of the games, and maybe some are in column A, some are in column B, maybe some it's not all Zhonghui's fault. Is this a draft, though? You look at what the Leviathans have here, Fafnir, Gilgamesh, Chiron, Terra, around this Zhonghui. What do you think the odds are of the first win for Zhonghui here in Season 8?
Unfortunately for my shtick, I think that this is pretty good odds for the Zhonghui here.
Unfortunately, it's a great pick.
Unfortunately, it does really work here. I mean, it's dive from the Fenrir, it's dive from the Vamana, the Loki as well. All very close range gods. Means that the stun from Zhonghui is going to get a lot of value. The full dive composition from the Leviathans is going to mesh well with the Zhonghui style as well. But I'm not until it gets that win, I'm not singing its praises.
Here's all the good things about Zhong, but I'm still not convinced. For what it's worth, I'm memeing on you a little bit because I agree. It's the type of pick where until it's notched that win column, you got to wonder why and how the priority lies where
it's a lot of attempts. It's like 8 picks already?
You're right. It's not like 2 games that have gotten lost.
No.
We're on like 6, 7, 8, something like that.
We need
for the Zhonghui here at this point. I know Gore leaves us for one weekend, and suddenly our stats are all over the place. It's like SpongeBob searching the filing cabinets for all of his info. Things are burning all around us. Let's talk about the Titans draft if we can really quickly. Raijin, Fenrir, Artemis, Loki, Vamana. Vamana's an interesting pick here. Do you think this Titans 5 works, though? And do they have a chance against the Leviathans in Game 1?
It's a very high execution draft. And when I say high execution, you can almost say that about every draft that doesn't have consistency C. And I think that's fair to say about the Titans. But if they pull an early lead, hard to slow them down.
Will Zhonghui get his first win of the year? Game 1 between Leviathans and Titans starts right now.
We'll find out, won't we, Dave? Thanks very much, Dave and Myth on the desk. Into game we go. And it's going to be Oxylevion in the solo lane. Me and Taco were kind of discussing maybe there's a chance we see him play the Hunter role. Your call goes back to solo for this one. But I'm interested more that he's gone with a Terror option, which I think is a little bit trickier to do.
In a sense, but at the same time, Terra does introduce a lot of really consistent team fighting action, and I think that for Oxy here, he just wanted to go for something that isn't necessarily going to lose you lane pressure outright and can still, for the most part, go toe-to-toe, I think, with the Vamana clear.
Yeah. Well, at the start of this, let's just see how this plays out, because looking at the compositions that Leviathans have put together here, very tanky, bruisery front line, I want to say, with Yorkor really in the back. It almost is a 4-stack of tanks when you look at how Jean-Qui's played. I know there's a lot of talk about Jean-Qui in terms of his competitive nature and how useful he can be. I think the issue is, though, is that, you know, in ranked and competitive games, it's two different things.
Two different things usually, but at the same time, I think that all of this front line is going to be the perfect kind of scenario for Shinto to actually try and get the Jean-Qui rolling, because that is the primary aspect that you were looking for as a Jean-Qui. Scary actually looking to get a little aggressive early on with beneath them, and same circumstances over here in the dual lane. Rongyu and Cyclone could be in some trouble.
Yeah, Cyclone will slip the news for now, but the focus was towards Aurora, who's that brutalized now. Rongyu on Yorkor doing a great job over here of just pushing back Cyclone and Aurora, who's staying up and competitive still. So much more Artemis we're seeing as of late, Taco.
A lot of Artemis thanks to that bow build preference that's been taking place over the course of Split 2 here in Season 8. Those mid-season changes really making the Ichabod, Atlantis, even Silver Branch stand out so much more so, and especially when you have Artemis having that 80% stim when she gets that Vengeful Assault fully up and running, that could pose some issues for this Leviathan's front line, just because Artemis can definitely shred through all those protections in no time.
2 Vamp Shrouds in the mid lane as well. Seeing the rise of Vamp Shroud as of late, 15 protections on this starter item, and with that protections that you're seeing on it, you see that a little bit more useful against these junglers, very physical focused obviously. It just gives you those little bit of extra protections, but not only that, the stats that this item gives you as the game goes on, Taco, very impactful.
Yeah, the stats over time are definitely important to note here, but I really want to keep an eye more so on Scary over everybody else, because Scary, I think, is going to be the prime commanding force here for the Tartarus Titans up against the Leviathans. And not only that, but with the Loki, there's always that constant threat to the backline. Mentioned it already, that the one thing Shinto's going to be looking for is all of that frontline presence to keep him safe, but if Scary is able to open things up with some nice flank opportunities, then that could pave the way for Aurora as well to maybe look for a Ragnarok, so it doesn't come down to solely Aurora's responsibility to be that beads burning aspect.
Yeah, I do agree, and we'll see if that beads burning aspect, if they can play around that. Can they use the Loki maybe for follow-up after that initial Ragnarok? Or maybe the taunts. I will say Benji playing this Vamana this game, I think that could be a big warning sign, I would say, for the Leviathans, because I think it's going to be quite tricky to bring him down with how he's going to be able to get hold of Shinto.
It's just incredibly aggressive all around from the Titans. The Vamana, Loki, Raijin, Fenrir, Artemis, this is not a composition that's going to reserve any sort of punches. When a team fight breaks out, it is their sole objective, I think, to just find the picks outright, because this is not a comp that you want to be reinitiating with. It's a comp where you throw your 1-2 and that's the end of the fight.
Well, only 4 minutes in so far, or approaching, I should say. No real pressure on the map as it stands. The gold lead, though, Titans up about 400 gold as of now. Shows they're just doing a bit of a better job farming. Obviously, Oxyladion in this squad for Leviathans has kind of changed what this game could have been with Titans up against Leviathans. I think it was very even. If anything, it's been Leviathans that have had a lead for a while now, undefeated so far in Phase 2. But a real chance for Titans to win this one today, even more so. And it'd be tricky if they don't, if I'm honest.
Tower dive looking to be the first blood opportunity here. Benji gonna tank it up for the time being, and it'll be Scary D with the first blood, but the tower tank toggle did not effectively work out. Scary actually gonna take the tower aggro, so Oxyladion will at least get a response with an assist at the very least, but the first blood damage still going the way of Scary D. Definitely poses some issues here still for the Leviathans.
But you can already see that Titans are doing the right thing in the circumstances, right? You want to try and knock Leviathans off the top or undefeated. You go for the weakest link where you can, and having Oxyladion in that solo lane is definitely going to get exposed here today. No discredit to Oxy, though. He's been around for a very long time. For anyone who's been around as long as I have, for example, he's been at every World Championship. He's actually played in Season 1, where he was on 404 for the Latin American squad, and then transitioned over time to becoming the coach of this team with Sanguine through the years. So he's got a good repertoire to his name here, Oxy. He's very experienced, at least around SMITE. In terms of competitive play, though, not as much.
Competitive play, though, doesn't really seem to be taking too much of an impact for him here. And this Leviathan squad as a whole, I think that they've actually done a pretty good job at stalemating the map for the most part. Really, the only direction that Scary had to work with there is just where Benji was able to find the most poke. But if they keep messing up the tower aggro leashes, for example, that could possibly open up for beneath them to look for a nice counter gank opportunity against Benji, and possibly even tells Leviathans, okay, well, if they're going to look to go ham on our solo lane sub, then we've just got to shift the pressure elsewhere to the duo side of the map.
And with that, you can see Leviathans looking at this Greater Scorpion here. Aurora's the only one really around to contest. Obviously, it's only a Greater Scorpion, no, not a Gold Fury, so no surprise to see him not jump in there. As I look through the compositions a little bit more, though, Taco, I would like to see Titans look for a Cursed Ankh at some point in this game. I think there's a lot of sustain on this squad Leviathans have that Cursed Ankh could really shut down.
Cursed Ankh, Sunder, those are both going to be really impactful when trying to deal with the likes of the Zhang Kui on top of the Terra combination. Earthen Fury inside of that Zhang Kui ultimate can certainly be a lot to deal with at once. And then not even beginning to mention Rongyu on this Fafnir. We all know how effective the Fafnir coerce can be in terms of shred capability. So a lot of things for the Titans to keep their eyes on. Even though it's a sub, that doesn't mean that this isn't still a Leviathan's roster hungry for a win.
Well, I actually see you're all going for the sledge this game early on. Do like this item when you get the physical opportunity to purchase it. Gives 10 all protections when you're around people, or should I say it gives stacking protections as you're around people, which makes it like very similar to a Thebes almost, but not requiring the stacks. Paul in mid lane though, gonna get hit by that hammer by Rongyu, forced to beads away early. Small window then now for the Titans to get exploited towards this mid lane.
Half his HP though, off of one card mark in the Fafnir hammer toss. That is not even the beginning of this Zhang Kui's potential, I think, when it comes to the actual damage output that he's able to throw. And not only that, but I know we mentioned it a lot, especially when it comes to the Zhang Kui picks in general, because no team has been able to find success so far. I believe the closest that have been to acquiring it have been the Bolts, but they ended up chalking a lead for themselves when they last tried to have an Anu on that Zhang Kui. So now Shinto trying to be the first to make history here for the SPL mid laners in Season 8.
At least for Season 8, yeah, I was going to say, I mean, the other aspect of this from my angle is like they trust in Zhang Kui even when they're having to use a substitute today too. So it shows that they really do have
that's
value.
What influenced them to take it.
Really?
They needed the big guns.
They needed another big frontline boy in Zhongadonga. Well, Scary, he gets a solo kill on the right-hand side, or should I say a duo Q just caught off camera there. Jit is a bit rookie, you know, he's got to catch up a little bit, but we should have noticed it too. But Oxy caught again under his tier 1 tower, and all the while there was nothing really Leviathans could do on this left-hand side of the map.
But I love that invade from the Leviathans, and Aurora actually going to eat a drop kick into the wall. Ragnarok just to try and peel himself away to safety, wins a Shamash, but it's not enough. Rongyu toying with the idea, I think, of the die, but recognizing that Paul being in between the T1 and T2 towers also, it's going to force him back. Still, mild win here for the Leviathans. They do have that red buff timer now for the Tartarus Titans, and again, it's just understanding Auxiliadon, he's not going to have fun in solo. He's pretty much just going to be forced to try and just keep Benji and Scary D's attention as long as possible. And for the rest of this Leviathan squad, they're just going to have to play the other half of the map. It probably won't shift the focus away from solo lane for the Tartarus Titans. They understand the advantages that are there are just too strong for them to give up. But they could at least make the team fights a little bit more even if everybody else is up to par.
Well, you can see a bit of a situation developing in the jungle, though, as Panitom has fallen 2 levels behind that of Scary D on this Loki so far. And some of that will come because of this experience on the right-hand side that Scary's been finding. Panitom now trying to get that blue buff for Oxy on this right-hand side. But with Benji hanging around here to keep the pressure rolling, he tries to slow down the experience gain that Oxy can get there. But at least Oxy will get his blue. That's a little thing for the cooldown reduction of MP5, which is something that a Terror in solo definitely would like.
That T1 tower health, though, not looking particularly healthy. Pindu already nearly dead, and just shy of the 10-minute mark means that could be the opportunity for Benji to begin transitioning his way from solo. He's level 11 now, up top of the charts there with Shinto and Paul, and could definitely be a very threatening force for Shinto to have to deal with if Benji's able to make some early rotations.
Aurora hammered again, pressured by the card from Shinto as well. A lot of talk about the card on Zhong Kui as of late. I thought it was really the exorcism and the ultimate that released the demons that causes problems, but a lot of people talking about the card and how much damage that's doing as of late.
It's the 1-3 combo from Zhang Kui especially that just absolutely tears apart HP bars for carries, and even for tanks. Jean Kui, I think a little bit of a tank destroyer ever since the mid-season changes. Scary D, not going to want to be the one to eat that hammer stun out of Rongyu, and Rongyu standard Fafnir play, just not trying to allow Paul to back at his luxury.
Meanwhile, just checking in on the life's anti-heal builds, I should say, coming through from Titans. Brawler's Beatstick online for Scary D now, just to make sure they do have some anti-heal in these engagements. The decoy will allow that proc to happen on these characters during the engagements. It's kind of easy to deploy in a situation. You just get a tick off to apply that Brawler's Beatstick, but I do expect to see a Divine Rune at some point from Paul here. Raijin, very, very useful at applying that with Raiju as well. Aegis now online, however, for Paul at level 12. His secondary relic available as more of the relics start to come through. Slow pace so far, though, Taco. Really, Leviathans have just tried to farm. I've not really seen any pressure other than Scary D ganking this right-hand side.
And it is the most consistent factor by far here for the Tartarus Titans, because not only that, but Scary is also getting his pick of the litter in terms of just ravaging this solo side XP from beneath them, and beneath them bound to struggle in these circumstances where a solo laner isn't able to actually help him maintain farm on that side of the map. But Aurora, on the other hand, also been under a decent amount of pressure, I think, from the Leviathans. Again, just really strong recognition from both of these teams in terms of where their attention should be focused right now.
So 3,000 gold lead for Titans as a hammer connects from Rongyu. He just tried to pressure onto Cyclone in that duo lane for the time being, but didn't really find anything. But Benji is now rotated from solo lane, looking towards Shinto, who finds a good stun to slow down Benji for a moment. Rongyu on the front side now. Yorko just picking up his purple buff. As you can see, Titan starting to play around this man advantage on the left-hand side of the map, looking to strip away some jungle. Bad news is, though, Taco, there's nothing really up for them to get.
Nothing really up for them to get, but Benji being able to at least drive home the message that he's here now, and that means the Leviathans can't potentially look at this Gold Fury for an early objective takeaway, knowing that Benji is going to be this little bit of a threat here on the Vamana with the rotations. And T1 Tower hasn't even gone down yet. It's really just Benji trying to force Shinto back.
Right inside there, Shinto did get those camps away from Benji, luckily enough. Continues to at least keep pace with the solo laner here, Shinto, as well. Level still behind for Oxy on this right-hand side as he's just trying to pick up what he can. And I'm starting to turn attention toward Gold Furies here now, Taco, too, in terms of exactly who we see go for it. I mean, realistically, I feel Titans might be the better overall at shredding this one down quickly, whereas Leviathans do have some securing the Chiron from range, potentially to steal it away. Bit of a tricky task, although with all the focus so far being solo lane, I feel like Leviathans haven't really done anything on the left-hand side.
I would probably lean a little bit more towards Shinto in terms of objective security, just because Taiko drums can take a little bit more channel time in comparison to just the Book of Demons or even the Exorcism outright.
Nice trap after that from Cyclone. Spin with the ball, follow the ball, did connect onto Yorko to stop him pressuring too. Now Aurora's going to look for the Ragnarok. Rongyu forced to ultimate defensively to avoid that. And pressure relieved on this left-hand side, but Cyclone did use his ultimate there in trade for Rongyu, so Chiron with a small advantage for the moment, as in the jungle, Scary and Pan it on me.
And that's actually going to be a force of the Assassinate there from beneath them. That could make a possibility for the Leviathans to now look towards this Gold Fury, even without the Fafnir having that draconic form. Coerce still effective enough, but it's going to be actually hardcore on the chase. Giddy up, not going to be able to knock Cyclone back just yet.
Good dive in from Yorko, still tanking the tower for his team to allow his damage dealers in melee range to get on in and find the kill. Paniton credited with that. And that really was Leviathans, like you said, finding pressure on Scary D on this left-hand side, created a potential Gold Fury that turned into a gank instead. Leviathans get themselves on the board.
Wherever Benji isn't, that's exactly where the Leviathans want to be the whole way through. And I think that was just heads-up play from the entirety of the Leviathans to just hammer down that dual side, understanding Cyclone, he's still in Artemis, there's still very low mobility, and Aurora not exactly on one of those peel-heavy Guardians, especially not with the build pathway he's opted for. Sure, he's got Gauntlet themes online now, but having just the Sludge beforehand, that's not really going to be enough, I don't think, against the likes of Gilgamesh, Fafnir, and Chiron in terms of damage.
So you did see Benji rotate from the left-hand side for a moment or two. Did go for the blink and beads options here, Benji. So looking to definitely dive the backline further. Meanwhile, Oxy, who has hit level 13 now, his secondary relic choice was the Cursed Dong. That's not upgraded just yet. Only a Raw and Rongu outstanding on relics here. And I am interested to see if we do see Titans go for any more anti-heal so far. Still no Divine Ruin for Paul in that mid lane. That was kind of expecting at some point. And meanwhile, it's only that Brawler's Beat Stick that I see on that squad for anti-heal options against a whole team that has Sustain in their kit.
Can be a little bit easy, though, for Scary D to proc the anti-heal, at the very least for his team.
Yeah.
But shouldn't really be the sole responsibility of a Loki, especially not if Scary D's intentions are to try and play this backline flank style that we've kind of envisioned so far from this composition out of the Tartarus Titans. But I am taking note of Benji's build as well. That stone cutting sword on top of the Void Shield just tells me his sole purpose right now in this match is just to make sure that Hardcore and Shinto do not get an opportunity to play the game.
Well, meanwhile in mid lane, Shinto going for that sustain build a little bit more so. If you're interested in the Zhongqi here, it's going to be the Spear of Magus, the Karen's Coin, and into a bit more like Bancrofts or the Typhons, which we've seen a rise of too. The sustain from this god is going to be very impactful in the team fights. Not seeing Shito have to use his ultimate just yet, but this grouping on the left-hand side, Titans are 5 men strong. Oxy now starting to rotate out of the solo lane towards the mid as Titans pull the Fury.
A bold pull, too, right in the face of most of the Leviathans roster here, but already down to half health. Same thing for Aurora, however. He's taking a decent chunk of his HP bar, but Benji being in the mix makes it almost impossible for this Leviathans roster to really feel all that comfortable pushing forward.
And with Leviathans grouping up as 5 now, Titans do drop the Fury, fall back, and what happens to the solo lane is the real question. They both don't rotate back to right-hand side. We may see another attempt around this, and Rongu jumping straight into the pit there with Yarkor alongside him. They may be looking around the Gold Fury just to clear out wards at the moment, with that sentry being placed down, just trying to keep full vision and make sure Titans are checking what's going on.
Quiet game so far, though, for Paul at least, in the mid lane. We've seen him get his beats forced once or twice, but even then, Leviathans not able to really act off of that initial little bit of pressure, and I think that it's also just been really strong positioning as well from Paul. He's not really doing anything that gives the Leviathans all that much of an edge, even after he gets his relics pulled, and not providing an opportunity for beneath them to capitalize on just makes it all the more difficult for the Leviathans to really seek out that map pressure.
And there is the Curse Dong picked up by Aurora now as well, just to notice that one. So they do have
Upgrade
one for
as well.
themselves as well, upgraded, which is the one that does more damage, if I'm honest. The base version just reduces healing. The upgraded version definitely increases the amount of damage done by people who have been sustained. And I think there's a lot of inconsequential healing that characters do on Leviathans too, that you don't get a choice in. For example, Yarkor on Chiron, that passive will trigger you to take more damage if you're under the effect of Cursed Donk.
And you can't even control that necessarily. It's just a passive that takes place every few intervals. And not only that, but I'm also noticing the build disparities, or differences I should say, between these two hunters. Hardcore actually going to offer that Crusher after getting the Transcendence, and Aussie stacking, not really something we've been seeing too many hunters want to really deal with as of late, given how strong bow build is, but given the fact that Chiron doesn't have any of those attack speed steroids to match that of Artemis, I think Hardcore's best intentions here are just to try and make it all the easier for Shinto and beneath them to be the real cleanup factors.
It definitely turns into one of these games, though, as we approach 19 minutes and only 3 kills in it. No Gold Furies down or Fire Giant attempts. A Pyromancer, though, is being looked at by Titans on the right-hand side. And Taco, I think that's a really good call from them. Play around where you've got the lead at the moment. You're not going to see Oxy really over that right-hand side or support from Panitom. So why not exploit it further by taking that Pyro and finding yourself some global gold?
This almost feels too slow for the Titans, at least. I would imagine that they should really be the ones establishing their presence, but it seems as though they're still giving up a decent chunk of this map pressure in favor of the Leviathans. And I say map pressure, but what I really mean is it's just stalemates.
Stalemates,
They don't feel comfortable trying to be the ones taking the primary initiative. It's almost like they're trying to wait for the Leviathans to mess things up themselves, but I think, if anything, that could actually work against the Tartarus Titans here, because when you're dealing with a team that is a sub in such a crucial position, you need to be the ones showing that if there's a sub in play, it shouldn't even be close when it comes to the team fight, because it's going to throw all sorts of metrics off here for the Leviathans. I mean, granted, he's got a general idea of how the Leviathans like to play, being the coach, but at the same time, it's not the same sort of synergy that you would expect from the full 5-man roster.
Completely agree, but I think from Titans' point of view here, Taco, trickier game for them because they should win this now. And like that's pressure in itself to know that you're expected to win a game or be focused down. Cyclone forced to Aegis and beads away. Tusky also dropped. Paniton pulled under the tower by Aurora, but the rest of Titans haven't rotated in yet. Oxy now on the scene as well as the tier 1 tower falls on the left-hand side. Leviathans find a good little engagement on left and start to try and use this man advantage to look towards the Gold Fury.
So far, 3 ultimates have been expended, but Shinto still has that Recall Demons in case the Tartarus Titans feeling frisky. Benji might be the first one into the mix, and it's going to be Paul starting off the fight.
Good ult from Paul, but he will escape with a Thunder Crash too. Beautiful play from him, but Benji down to threat. Curstock are activated onto him, but they won't have the chase potential available. Wrong UD transforms. Leviathans fall back to the Fury, but look at Scary D just wrapping around the back potentially to make a re-engagement. Has his ultimate available, but Gold Fury's dropping slowly here.
And it's going to be all about beneath them trying to find that dropkick into the wall for Benji. Understand that big baby transformation no longer available. Scary Knee going to walk right through the entirety of the Leviathans, but still no blood spilled either direction. If anything, this is almost the Tartarus Titans kind of lucking out here with some slightly missed cooldowns by the Leviathans. Cyclone Spin barely gets out. Paul barely gets out. So it seems as though the Leviathans no longer want to be the ones pulling this Gold Fury.
But a lot of ultimates down on both teams here. Gold Fury now being unleashed by Titans. Reset again as the dance of the Fury begins. And with Hazu saying how long this game's gone so far with very little kills, it is going to be a real balancing act here. If one team fight could really blow the game wide open in either direction right now. And it's Leviathans with a ton of sustain that could come into play here with Terror over here along with the rest of the squad. And also that Curse Dunk being used momentarily ago by Aurora. This is an opportunity. Gold Fury getting low. Pulled into the corner. Aurora leaps on in towards Oxy. Panitom zoning away Cyclone and Paul at the same time. Gold Fury is reset as Cyclone does take down Panitom, but Benji got hold of Yorko at the back. And that's the issue with the big baby on the back line alongside Aurora. Now looking towards Oxy, who's going to be in trouble too. Shinto was left exposed for Scary D, and one team fight later, 4 members of Leviathans are dead, and the Titans take the Gold Fury.
Patience is a virtue for a reason, I suppose, and Tartarus Titans recognize that their best fight is before all of the ultimates had actually come back into play there for the Leviathans. Beneath them nearly got it started off pretty hot there with that dropkick focus in the Winds of Shamash right on top of Cyclone Spin. However, a great disengage and peel back from Benji and the rest of the Titans to ensure that Cyclone stays alive. It was the primary reason why Leviathans were the ones finding themselves 4 members down. And Drongyu, while he managed to survive, not sure how much a lone Fafnir can really do in terms of preventing this Fire Giant from going the way of the Titans.
And that's just rough too. You lose 4 members in the Gold Fury fight, you lose the Gold Fury. Titans can respawn, go to the FG, but maybe Drongyu can make a hero play. Not this time round though, as he's forced to leap away from Benji and Paul giving chase. FG to the Titans, who can now start to take more of a lead with some of these towers soon to fall.
I'll be honest though, Hindu, it probably doesn't feel all that great either for the Tartarus Titans there. I feel as if the Leviathans are honestly just one step away from having things go completely in their favor. And that Gold Fury fight, I think more so a punishment because of the fact that it just took so long for anything to really break out there. Leviathans maybe getting a little bit too ambitious, I think, with popping that belt, or the girdle, excuse me, hold my thought, the he's just caught.
Loses the 1v1 there. I know Aurora was around, but that wasn't really an impact at all. Interesting trade out between the two, and that was Paddington being 2 levels down at the moment. You can start to see the power the Titans have. They're also taking on an FG team, so the extra damage will come into play, and the sustain too. As a tier 1 now falls on the left-hand side. Titans looking to pressure some more though. Benji off in mid lane, split pushing his way. Soon to be joined by Paul in either direction, who's splitting the difference in the jungle here. And it's up to Leviathans on base defense to see what they can do. All relics are still coming back up for some members. Aegis down on Paul. Couple sets of beads though on Leviathans are down. And that should be something Titans recognize. Hammer hits from Drongyu onto Aurora. As now the Titans step into the throne room and take out Oxy, who can't do much against that.
beautiful space creation from Aurora there on that left side Phoenix, and it's the best Phoenix for the Tartarus Titans to take out first, but 2 members dead for 40 seconds means that these T2 towers don't really stand much of a chance. Typically, you might see teams looking for a little bit of a poke opportunity, but that won't be the case here for the Leviathans. It's just in their best interest to stand back, let that 1,500 gold go the way of the Tartarus Titans, and hope that Vrongyu and Auxiliadon are actually alive in time to try and hold off on this mid Phoenix, but it seems as though they might just lose 2 birds here.
And already Titans onto this middle Phoenix before the members of Leviathans can even get there to defend. Obviously, it's mainly the back line alive, not the front line, which makes it very tricky there for them to try and handle the front line and back line pressure the Titans would exhume there. So with that, 2 Phoenixes now down. Titans head into the jungle to just strip away some buffs. And it's all going to be on Leviathans trying to defend the right-hand side or maybe next FG. But realistically, I mean, the FG is up for another minute or 2 still.
And right now, it obviously looks great for the Tartarus Titans. Don't get me wrong. They did a fantastic job as far as the siege came down to it. Beneath them as well, maybe a slight oversight on his behalf, not expecting members from the Tartarus Titans to be in that Gold Fury vicinity. But more importantly, if I'm the Leviathans, I really don't feel too terribly with how this game 1 has gone so far, because it was incredibly close for the first 22 minutes, and even then, I'm not completely sold that they're out of it on this set, because it was really just one fight, but that's oftentimes the case when it comes to Smite games, when you wait this long for the real engagements to break out. And I guess more so what I'm trying to get at here is, from the Tartarus Titans, I guess I want to see a little bit more initiative. I want to see a little bit more direction, because that hesitation could come back to bite them against a squad like the Leviathans.
I agree, but I also think the Titans, game 1, you don't want to mess this up. You can't lose to
That's
a
fair.
sub, dude.
That
You
is
can't
very
lose
fair.
to a sub. We lose to a sub, social media is going to go rampant about how we all need to be kicked off the
But
team.
they are such a strong roster.
However, yeah, but game 2, I'm expecting Titans may just go for blood early, because now they've got that win under the belt, they're probably more confident going into game 2. Although the one thing Titans need to work on, it's about synergy and working as a team. So even if it's slow going for them to find the wins, a W's a W at the end of the day. So trying to find that here as now Leviathans try and group up and around the right-hand side. Rongyu forced to ult away. Benji versus Shinto on the left-hand side is going as Rongyu's taken into the sky on that dragon. Thanks to Ragnarok from Aurora. Panitom now using the winds of Shamash to slow them down. But he gets collapsed on by Paul at the same time as Scaredy gets hold of Shinto. Yorko does at least take down Scaredy for the shutdown. All the while, though, minions are flooding into the Titan room from the side of Titans here to try and keep the pressure on Leviathans. And this one could be the writing on the wall here, as now all the members of Titans, minus Scaredy, start to mosey on down mid to join that fire minion wave on the Titan.
But even with Rongyu and Hardcore getting these backs off, the Titan HP just simply too low for the Leviathan's backline and last standing frontline member to really deal with. An unfortunate one for the Leviathans, but definitely a nice confidence booster for the Tartarus Titans. Like I said, I know that it was a little bit shaky for the Titans at the start, but I really don't feel like you want to give the Leviathans any sort of time to get a better grounding underneath them.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Titans took it kind of slow that game, which is expected with all the pressure that was probably on them over Leviathans here. But now with game 2 soon approaching, we'll find out if Titans can close this one out quick, or will Leviathans bounce back, is the real question. We'll see you after the break.
Tempo, can you keep up with my tempo? Yeah, blowing up, C4. I just hit the Mike Jackson on my tiptoes. Oh yeah, I know we go wherever that wind blows. The endo. Don't slip on the trail. Don't slip on the. Don't slip on the. Don't slip on the trail. High key, I know. I send all of my rap foes like they my tadpoles. Yeah. Blowing up, C4. I just had to go crack now on my Depot. Yeah, that Draco bustin' like free throws. I do not miss no shots, I got the cheat code. That's why I never lose. They can't predict my moves. I'm way too smooth, I just caught a groove. This right here, that Charizard, the fire in the booth, Had to go right back to it, If you ain't talking about money, please save your breath, don't bring it up to me, I pull up in that stunt like a 007 James Bond type movie, Hey, don't slip on the trip. No, 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 no. Don't slip on the trip. Don't slip on the, don't slip on the, don't slip on the, don't slip on the, don't slip on the trail. Tempo, tempo, you keep up with my tempo, tempo.
Aggro here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible, and in Season 8, I'm sure our players are going to take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're going to need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing one for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor.
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
Plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true.
I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally anything with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple the amount I have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
And what's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240 Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy, I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality.
We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the SMITE Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible SMITE experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com.
And you're telling me an alien wore this?
Welcome back to the SPL, of course, powered by our friends over at Alienware. Alienware, our title sponsor here in Season 8 of the SPL. Always worth giving them a shout-out. They provide the 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM, quadruple what Vote has, I guess, at home. It's great for streaming, great for content, and Zapman will tell you the same. Make sure to head on over to smitegame.com/Alienware. Use code SMITEAW and pick up some of those 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM for yourself and jump on the content grind, I guess. Thanks to Alienware for sponsoring us here in Season 8 of the SPL. DJ minus 90K is with me here on the desk to talk about game number 1. What?
You gonna out me, bro? You don't see Deadmau5 in the street and you're like, oh, that's him, that's Deadmau5. You don't see Marshmallow.
You can literally type exclamation point in chat, exclamation point playlist.
Oh, you're gonna tell him this now? Do the desk thing, man.
What do you mean? It was DJ Dig Dog yesterday.
Well, that's obvious. You've been known as Dig Dog. It's on your wiki
page. And it's been known you lost 90K.
Stop saying it, bro.
Also, yes, if I saw Deadmau5 on the street, I'd be like, yo, that's Deadmau5. People have seen him without his helmet, right?
Yeah.
So there's no secret.
On Twitch.
Yeah, there's no secret.
Yeah, but you're gonna point at him. Deadmau5.
So you're saying it's like you're in the early stages of Deadmau5. Your mask hasn't been taken off yet.
Yeah,
I just did it.
Think of me like Daft Punk. I don't know what's under the mask.
Got it. What's great is none of that's your actual music. You just put together a little playlist for us and put it out. So it was a good playlist. Thanks, DJ minus 90K. Let's talk about game number 1 though. If you're the Leviathans, you'd probably prefer we didn't, because this is one that the Titans. They kind of rolled over. There was one pivotal fight around that Gold Fury, and things just kind of snowballed out of control from that point on. It felt like the Titans, or the Leviathans, were going to have a bit of a hold on this game earlier on, and then things kind of spiraled, and the Titans still a good enough team to capitalize on that, and they take game 1.
Yeah, it felt like to me the Leviathans were in a decent spot to try and at least push themselves a little bit further in that match, but around the 20-minute mark, we saw a Gold Fury get pulled where they didn't quite have their ultimates available to them. The Leviathans say, all right, well, this is a good opportunity. We're all here. Let's go ahead and pull the gold. And you look over on that right-hand side and realize not a single ultimate was ready. And then, well, the Titans won that team fight, got that objective as well. And from there, it was pretty cut and dry. Titans looked good throughout, especially Scary D, man. Somehow gets through both phases of bans, goes towards his signature pick inside of this Loki, 6, 2, and 4. Ooh, maybe ban that next time, Leviathans.
Yeah, Scary D will gladly take that if it falls down to 8th or 9th pick or whatever it was there for the Titans. Benji, good performance on the Vamana there as well. Mifflin, Zhang Kui, still over. Still hasn't won a set yet here in the SPL. Is this one, you think, lost because of the Zhang Kui, or there just happened to be a Zhang Kui on the team that lost?
There was an amalgamation of errors, I think. It's a hard situation to play with a sub, especially one that
of course.
On such short notice as well, but Zhang Kui didn't do them any favors, I'd say. Has damage output, but I wouldn't say the sole reason they lost.
No, of course not. Like this is always going to be a tall task for the Leviathans. Still a chance, though, to turn around this set. And I think a point we talked about earlier on still stands, is that the Leviathans are such a strong team that this is not one where the Titans can expect to just roll things over, though they did in game number 1. It took a bit of a trip up in game 1 for the Titans, to get that lead and really snowball things. The Titans are that good of a team that they can snowball a lead like that. We'll jump into picks and bans for game number 2. Untie my tongue here a little bit, and let's see if some of these P's and B's can get us back on the right track. Leviathan's over in the first pick slot here this time. I think after the performance Scary D has on the Loki there in game 1, it's got to be something the Leviathans consider here, either in their first 3 bans or what could be a top pick, because Scary D, when given that space, he died a couple times. He was the only 2 deaths on the Titans, but he was the driving force in the kills department.
There's just so many meta picks here in Smite that it feels a little bit bad to go towards that Loki in the first slot, because what are you leaving open in exchange? Very likely something like Yamoja gets through, or maybe even the Gilgamesh or something along those lines. So I think that this is the right adaptation from the Leviathan. Sure, Panatom is capable, obviously, of playing the Loki at a very high level, but not necessarily the god that we closely associate with him. And instead, I think better suited, get him on something a little bit more comfortable and ban it out. Make sure Scary D has to go a little bit deeper into his god pool.
I think that's smart there. Osiris taking away Loki as well. On the other side, Titans seem to be sticking just to the tier list at the moment. Tiamat off the board. Yamoja follows there as well. Yamoja's been sort of in an interesting spot, though. 50% is what you see there in the SPL ban rate. But when Rongyu's on the other team, I think that increases there a little bit. Half the time banned out against the Leviathans specifically. Fenrir gets taken off the board as well. So a couple of the pieces that worked for the Titans in Game 1 now go by the wayside. And then I think a smart ban from the Titans as well. That's something Shinto's played on the Raijin and looked good on as well. So I think across the board, all 6, you could probably make an argument for it. All makes some sense.
Yeah, that leaves a lot of meta picks available. I mean, Gilgamesh still out there. Athena has been having a slight resurgence. King Arthur. I mean, just about everything. There's a lot of targeted bans in this first phase. And the Leviathans go towards that Artemis in their first pick selection. A very easy to shut down god if you're able to itemize or draft around it. Things like Walls really puts the kibosh to this god. Ymir available still and is one of Wrong U's favorite. Could see the Titans try and strip that one away. But instead, Baba Yaga, that stacking item works out a lot. I mean, Warlock Staff, great stat stick, has a ton of power, ton of HP, survivability. Doesn't have to be the Warlock Staff, could even go towards the Book of Thoth, the Karen's Coin, all things that Baba Yaga utilizes very well. I think there's going to be a high damage output game for him, and I think Baba Yaga is a mainstay here, as long as there's no boots in the world.
Yeah, it's not something we've seen Paul play in the last 6 games, but I think for whatever reason, if I hear Baba Yaga, I'm thinking Hurry Wind as of late. I think Paul probably looks pretty good on this pick as well. Definitely a pick we've at least seen him on a couple of times in the past, and has looked good. Then itemization, I think, important, and it's good you bring that up there, Mifflin, where Baba Yaga's in a spot now where you can get online a little bit earlier and be feeling a little bit better. Hachimon follows that up, as well as a Sobek and a Discordia over on the other side. Discordia for Shinto provides a little bit of lockdown, a little bit of control. If the Leviathans are looking to delete a target, well, Discordia in the mid lane will help you out.
It will. That passive so strong early on. This Sobek has flex potential, could go into support, and has good synergy with Artemis. Pluck and a trap, always going to be a good combo, but there is that flex potential of it going into the soul lane, so the Tartarus Titan's going to have to be a little bit cognizant of that fact, and it seems like they are willing to put the bet that it is this Sobek going towards solo. Fafnir banned out in this second phase indicates that they're still targeting supports.
Yeah, Fafnir, a very strong pick for Rongyu as well. Sobek, I have no data, because Gore's gone, to reference this off of.
God,
I feel like Sobek, I know. He'll be back, don't worry. He's gone for this weekend. Sobek, I feel like we've seen out of the solo lane more than we have in support here as of late. That just feels like the way the meta's been shifting. Toss a Vampiric Shroud on the Sobek, and things feeling good over there in the solo lane. Again, I have no actual data. That's just sort of what things feel like over there in the solo lane. Ban still heading on towards Scary D here, and if you consider the Fenrir a jungle ban, Scary D takes 3 so far up against the Leviathans. I think Odin worth looking at here, Mifflin. A strong pick, provides some lockdown, especially with the Baba Yaga on the other side. You can kind of circle all that damage in on specific targets for the Leviathans, and so could be the forming of a strong team fight.
It is. The Odin also just great into both Artemis and Sobek, both gods that are going to probably have to pick up a Phantom if they want to deal with this cage early on. This Odin, again, has flex potential. Could go into the jungle, more likely going to head over into the soul lane. When we do see Odin inside the solo, generally it's blink in that first relic slot and very early rotations towards the center of the map. You want to utilize that cage before that second relic slot becomes available to the Leviathans, because that's generally where you start to see that Phantom get picked up.
Vamana again. All right, so this is interesting now, Miff, where
they just like it.
Vamana was solo for the Titans in Game 1. Vamana again for the Titans in Game 2, but there's already an Odin locked in. If we're gonna assume that it's Odin that ends up flexing, or maybe it's not, I guess maybe I'll pass that off to you. If you're looking at maybe a jungle pick for either of these two, we'll wait and see what the Titans draft 5th. Could either of those two flex into the jungle and find success?
Odin could go into the jungle. It's something that we've seen in the past. Back in Season 4, he was getting played in the jungle a lot. He has great gank potential, and since the rework, likely has even better gank potential now. The cage, even if you leap out of it, you take some damage. Has a ranged stun, good damage and burst off the bird bomb as well. Vamana has seen some jungle as well, but I'm not as huge a proponent of that pick. Horus locked in here, though, for the Leviathans. I think that is a huge adaptation from them. We got Rongyu going towards one of his favorite picks, which almost guarantees that it is going to be Sobek heading over towards solo, to speak to your anecdotal point that we do see him over there more often than not.
Another one for Dave.
Erlang Shen in the jungle. This is a very frontline-centric draft here from the Leviathans, wherein Artemis and Discordia are likely going to be left to their own devices in the backline.
Miff, we get one of our questions answered here. Nemesis selected now for the Titans, so Scary D will be on the Nem. Odin or Vamana then go to support. I feel like in Season 7, once or twice, because remember, like, real onset of Season 7, Odin was very strong. There was a lot of Odin picks coming out. I feel like we saw Odin support a couple of times. Warrior support was a thing we've seen a few times over the last year and a half or so. Do you think Odin makes more sense in support than Vamana does?
100%.
Okay,
only one of those gods has
good,
like a good form of CC that's consistent. Sure, Vamana's got the knock up and a slow, but Odin's got a wall and a stun, which is a little bit easier to execute on. Has great wave clear as well. Vamana support, I'm not sure that we've really ever seen in competitive.
I don't know if we should.
I'm sure Blue's graphics or Goremiser's going to have me like, actually in Season 3, Game 6 of Week 2, we saw Vamana support once.
That's just on you, though.
Yeah, that's just on me. I shouldn't have said it, but I don't think we're going to see Vamana support here.
No, do you lose anything, though, with the Odin? That was always the conversation around Cthulhu. You stick Cthulhu in solo lane or support. Where does it do better? Do you feel like you lose out on anything if you're putting Odin in that role? You have to itemize a little bit more support-centric, or is it, at that point, it's really for the lockdown, the stun, the cage?
Odin's majority of his damage comes from his ability scaling, not necessarily the item scaling. So I think you're not losing out on too much insofar as early burst potential. You're still getting great dive. You are lacking a second magical source for your team. This is a quadruple physical draft here from the Tartarus Titans, but we've seen the damage output that Baba Yaga has. If you think you can just sleep on the magic damage there, build a little bit more FizzD, well, then all of a sudden Baba Yaga's going to be able to tear through you pretty easily. I think she generates enough threat in her own right that you still have to kind of itemize generally normally.
Right, it takes a little bit of time to get there. A little less time to get there has been the conversation piece around Baba Yaga. Since the no boots changes come through, Baba Yaga's had a easier time getting some of those items online. Let's look at the Leviathans draft a little bit, though. Artemis, Sobek, Disco, Horus, Erlong, Shen. What do you think this team's trying to do?
They're looking to dive, generally. Sobek is good initiation from a range, so you can get that backline involved, but other than that, I mean, Erlang, Shen, Horus, and Sobek together are going to have a very easy time closing gap onto either Hachiman or Baba Yaga. It's really about how easily are you going to be able to get Artemis involved. She's the main question mark for me. She doesn't have a leap. She doesn't have a great way to close gap. If she uses that Vengeful Assault for the movement speed buff to get into the enemy's back line or even further into their front line, well, she's losing that slow immunity, which is going to make it harder to deal with gods like Baba Yaga, like Odin. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Yarkor plays around this pick.
Yeah, Yarkor is not the type to shy away from a challenge.
No, he's running
he wants to run in, and the Artemis might be able to help him out in that regard. Game number 2, Tartarus Titans Leviathan, starts right now.
Thanks so much, Dave and Myth on the desk. Yes, into Game 2 we go. And for me, Taco, I'm very excited about seeing what happens in the duo lane this game. Obviously, Aurora, Cyclone, Odin, Hachiman up against the Horus and Artemis this game. I think this should be a really exciting duo lane to watch just to see how Odin can make this work.
Odin's definitely going to have some great lockdown potential in terms of team fights, but the laning phase itself could definitely still find an edge for Drangyu and Hardcore if they're able to play this one right. Not only that, I love this Artemis switch up for Hardcore. I think that it's instrumental if the Leviathans want to find themselves trying to stretch this out to a Game 3 because it's a hyper carry, a classic hyper carry, and I think that it's something that the Leviathans were definitely missing in Game 1.
That's fair, and I will say, looking at the builds real quick coming through, Rongyu started off with the Phantom this game too, so recognizing Odin's going to be around the left and middle of the map more often this game means that we do see this early Phantom pickup. I think if we saw an Odin in the solo, you may see that at the secondary relic slot potentially, but the realization is there as Shinto will hit level 2 in mid lane a little bit quicker than that of Paul here, giving some pressure to Leviathans early on these Ryan Harpies.
Just some smart adjustments all around for the Leviathans. Even having Sobek in that solo lane now, arguably a lot more survivability in that pick could make things a little bit more problematic in terms of whether or not Scary D is trying to focus on the aggression there, but so far it seems as though Leviathan's duo lane is going to find themselves with a slight edge. A successful invade. Cyclone Spin though, no problem with the Aijutsu out of there into safety. However, Hardcore still trying to just make sure that he's not overstepping his boundaries. It's not to say that a Nemesis couldn't lick the Visit duo.
You know, credit where it's due there. Cyclone steps in the trap, but at first I was like, that's a bit crazy that he did that. However, Rongyu was already in range for a stun anyway. Beads in, taking the trap out, then disengaging isn't the worst idea. But there is a window now where Titans have to sit back in that dual lane for a minute with Hachiman not having those beads available and Rongyu being on this Horus with plenty of CC for follow-up alongside your core, who's playing Artemis that over the last year or so, she's had a lot of changes to her, a little bit of buff here, buff there, passive changes as well. It's now focused around extra damage you'll do when a target is CC'd.
Do you remember when Transgressor's Fate had very little range?
Which
you
one's
literally
Transgressor's
had
Fate?
the trap.
Okay,
trap.
cool. Why do we're not going to keep using their item? Suppress the insolent. Caledonian
Hey, I mean, he
Boar.
did just use the ability, suppress
did.
the insolent. He's
did.
pressing Aurora's insolence.
Aurora's
Okay.
kind of insolent sometimes, in fairness.
Only when he wants to
doesn't make
troll in
sense.
the interviews.
Exactly. Oh, he trolls in some games too. Not in the Pro League, though. Meanwhile, Leviathans here invading the red buff early on. Titans do have a bit of a lead at the moment in 200 gold. And it's all pressure again from Titans on the right-hand side, looking to try and invade and strip away that blue buff. But all the while, Leviathans realizing they need to play around their advantages and their core of the team as Panatom rotates to the left-hand side to try and steal away the purple, which wasn't successful there. Cyclone did secure that for himself, but it came at the cost of the red buff.
Just going to pour one out right quick for Benitham, losing that speed buff to Scary D and Back Harpy soon to follow. Scary's got to be careful, though, not to say that he couldn't get caught out, but takes the big Harpy, which is the primary focus, I think, for most junglers when they're looking for that invade. A very nice punish, though, regardless, from Scary, recognizing the fact that Leviathans just keep trying to hammer away at that duo side map pressure, understanding that very unlikely for them to try and play through Auxiliadon on this Sobek by no fault of his own. This is a tough task, I think, for any coach to try and step up to. We had Slaney though, so it's maybe we just get let's just get all the SPL coaches to step in for.
Just to be clear, I didn't put any of this in the script this week of coaches playing through. Otherwise, because I did get hit up by Biggie yesterday, Anchor Bomb going, "When's my time to shine?" And I'm like, "Listen, boys,
sooner than you think.
It's phase 2. Okay, maybe phase 3 is the big change where it's coach off." Is what happens in the solo lane one game.
I don't think the teams would be happy with that.
I'd like to see a coach off to see who.
They'll do it for Split 2. Split 3,
So
I'd
Split
be
3,
hard
different
pressed
story.
to believe.
Maybe we'll make it a week of it where all the coaches play solo lane. Excited to see if there's a step up in gameplay from some.
Yeah, so by the way, Ro, we haven't forgotten about you. Bolts, you guys are going to have to obviously throw Ro in there at some point. Same thing for you, Cherry. I'm sure he's been itching.
There's plenty. Tigris too, I want to see how that one works out. Meanwhile, left-hand side here, Raw has hit level 5 alongside Cyclone Spin. You can see Titans have got a bit of advantage in that lane. Those ultimates being available now puts a bit more pressure onto Leviathans to be very careful here. Yorko will get his ultimate, but take into account, this Artemis isn't great into the Odin, mainly because of the fact you will be trapped in that circle. Panitum, though, rotating to this left-hand side, only level 4. Flank attack attempted here as Rongu got aggressive. Rongu keeping himself out of position intentionally as the burden connects from Aurora onto Panitum, but Panitum won't get enough damage off there to secure Aurora, who just drops the ring to force the disengage.
But on a bright side, the silver lining there, I think, for the Leviathans is that now Aurora no longer has that Odin cage to try and threaten Arcor. So there's a possibility now that we see this dual lane from the Leviathans choosing to maybe step up a little bit more aggressively throughout this laning phase. Have to remember there's going to be at least a few more minutes for the Leviathans to work with here to see if they could try and establish first blood, although not certain, or I should say not sold on how much of a lead it would actually be able to present, as Paul looking to blast off away from Shinto and some of that disco damage.
Well, I mean, speaking of leads at the moment, Shinto is level 8 over the level 6 so far. Paul, it's about level and a half lead there at the moment for Shinto in that mid lane. And a lot of that is because Panatom's giving up farm around that middle area towards Shinto. He's pressuring elsewhere on the map, which is allowing him to get a lot more free farm. So expect Shinto to be the focal point, at least through this mid-early game, of where Leviathan should try and power play once he's got these levels online. Focus on Paul in mid right now as Rongu jumps in, releases the pressure around those Harpies on the left-hand side, allowing Leviathans to continue to try and gather some momentum and catch back up the 1,000 gold they find themselves down at the moment.
And Discordia in general is a relatively interesting pick here for Shinto. Her combo, the Wombo combo, is really all in that Strife Unruly Magic, and more importantly is the fact that Cyclone, Scary, Benji, those are all dash-based gods with the Vamana, Nemesis, and Hachim, and a little bit easier, I think, to get them grouped up inside of that Strife for the big Unruly Magic follow-up. And if there's Rongu there as well, which he usually is wherever Shinto is at, then there's a good opportunity, I think, for Leviathans to have some really strong collapse here up against the Tartarus Titans.
Well, the big difference here is you see Cyclone on the left-hand side, pressured by Yorko, hard enough for him to use his ultimate defensively there. will be safe as Tusky does some work on those minions over time. I will check in that gold lead that we talked about, the Leviathans are behind at the moment to Titans, is really on this solo lane side. The net worth between Benji versus Oxy at the moment, you can see the difference is 1,400 gold. Scary in the jungle, though, picked apart and deleted before Aurora could even get involved. That trap CC combo with a pin, very painful.
Scary just getting absolutely punished for not having beads as that first relic, and that's the risk that's involved with any time you take a blink first. Beneath them, definitely managing to prosper here, and the stone cutting rush as well on this Erlong just makes it all the easier for the left side Gorp to go down in favor of the Leviathans, meaning that Leviathans could just be looking to try and chip away at the Tartarus Titans with some early objective pools. If they can continue punishing Scary when he's looking for flank opportunities against Hardcore after getting that boar forced out of him, I think that it says a lot for Artemis's damage output just off the kill that they were able to find.
Well, Leviathan still with a bit of a power play on this left-hand side. Stun onto Aurora, into a trap, into the knock-up. Goodbye, Aurora! You were deleted! Cyclone can only really watch on. No ultimate available. Beads is up, but what's he really going to do to defend an over by that combo? And that is a disgusting combo. Artemis, Horus, and that was played inch perfect.
Any sort of stun lock opportunity is going to be the ultimate setup imaginable, but that's not to say that Paul isn't looking to try and strike a little bit of presence of his own. Home sweet home, dealing some good damage for the start. Beneath them's HP bar just absolutely a goner to this damage output by the Baba Yaga.
Left-hand side, though, Scary D rotating in to put pressure on Yoko and Rongyu, who are trying to zone Cyclone away from this minion wave coming in. Aurora coming back from spawn 2, forced to tank the tower there, as Shinto in mid lane hung around for Benji to find the kill there on the rotation. Cyclone, meanwhile, on this left-hand side is going to end up falling down. Yoko and Rongyu dived the tier 1 tower there, and they're both still alive. Great taunt from Paddington to buy Yoko some time. He's still on the run. Aurora's cooldown should be up soon. The juggle's good, but the bomb is there. Aurora still can't find the kill. Needs one more hit, and Scary will blink on him for the kill. And now it's Panitom versus 2. Scary's out of mana here, but the minion wave comes into play, and Paul's rotation from mid with Shinto dying there goes in Titan's favor. And now they're in the power seat.
And that was just really well executed across the board there from the Tartarus Titans whole roster. Benji starting things off by establishing some pressure in mid, forces Shinto out of the golden apple even, and that just makes it easy for Paul to then be like, okay, well, the mid laners died, I'll just clear this wave, rotate over to duo where all the action seems to be taking place, and now with no clear map pressure in favor of the Leviathans, I think that this is where the Tartarus Titans should really start trying to look for their first early objective pool, and it's probably going to be the Gold Fury to start things off.
Credit where it's due, though. That all really began with Benji in the mid lane, rotating over, finding the pick on Shinto, and that's because Benji's got the lead and the confidence in the solo lane so far.
2 levels.
And that just continues to, give the lead towards Titans and help them out around the map, and it pays off pretty well. I don't think Leviathans are out of this one just yet, though, with how the duo lane is playing. But that middle area and the rotations coming through from solo have to be caught a little bit cleaner from the Leviathans in this one so far. And as you said, Gold Fury is under threat from both teams now as we hit that 10-minute mark. A little bit quicker than game 1, which is a good thing. Both teams going at it early. Leviathans giving as good as they get so far.
I will say, though, it was pretty slick by Beneath them to actually look for the Erlong taunt off the ultimate while they were inside of the cage. And that's definitely something that I think the Tartarus Titans might need to be a little bit mindful of, because you do have this Erlong initiation to kind of set up for that Strife Unruly Magic combination they were talking about from Shinto. But if Benji's able to just keep harassing Shinto inside that mid lane with these small rotations, that could be all the impact that the Tartarus Titans need in order to stay up on the map.
Thinking about the Odin versus the Discordia matchup too, I mean, in a weird way, if you're Discordia, you want to be in the ring so you can at least get your abilities out still, because the apple will bounce into the ring and bounce away again. So there's actually a bit of counterplay there available. If Aurora sees the apple coming, dropping the ring down could negate some of the team from taking hold of that damage.
At the same time, though, you don't want to have to expend everything to keep your carries alive whenever they're inside of that ring. It is.
But you take damage.
But at the same time, again, it's just using everything to just buy a little bit of time, even if you survive that initial Odin Cage, you still have to worry about all the follow-up to come. And with the Tartarus Titans, this is a relatively aggressive draft that they have here, especially with Scary D being able to strip away so many protections outright off the Nemesis ult.
Well, Paul's found himself 1 kill so far after that rotation to left-hand side here. You can see that build coming along nicely for Baba Yaga. She's very much stack-focused, this god. Fully stacked Warlock staff, stacks on the Charon's coin coming through too. The passive really coming into play to force Paul to be in a more dangerous position at this stage of the game than you may have expected. Shinto, meanwhile, you know, he's got the Charon's coin as well, but you can see without any involvement in kills so far, no stacks available.
Very melee dependent, though, from the Leviathans in terms of their initiation. They're going to have to work through melee range, I should clarify. Horus, Erlong, while they can be great driving forces early on, I don't feel as though Benithum's been able to have the impact that he was originally seeking out with this Erlong Shen. Strife, slightly off the mark.
You can see Horus in the sky. Now, Rongyu looking to dunk down onto Cyclone Spin, who bought time with his Aijutsu just to get away back to safety. Didn't use his ult or beads, but it did expose that tower a little bit more so. It's not taken down just yet. Leviathans look like they're trying to keep him in the lane in a weird way by not dropping that tower to give them the opportunity to dive again. But Cyclone, wise to the pressure Leviathans are going to exert on this left-hand side. With solo lane not being a question of invade or gank potential anymore, it really will be Leviathans looking towards duo time and again. And the Hunters of the world know the focus is always on the duo lane.
Cyclone trusts Benji to have full control of the solo lane. I think this entire Tartarus Titans roster likely having the same expectations.
Speaking of that real quick, you can see Benji just proxied that wave away on that right-hand side. Recalls to base. Don't be surprised to see him now rotate to the Gold Fury side of the map. And Oxy is aware of that, but now he's got a hard decision to make. Does he go for the farming right to try and catch back up the 4-level differential between the two? Or does he come over to the Gold Fury to help contest? Well, at the moment, Benji's already arrived.
And it seems as though Leviathans is going to have to make the better call to just try and acquire some of that farm to leverage out this difference as Rongyu forced to retreat.
But Benji blinks and goes in on Shinto, and Shinto forced to jump away. Apple comes out, ricochets off the wall, didn't even find a target there as Benji's beat down's enough to pressure Leviathans all the way back to the back green buff. And Titans go towards the Fury. Pull has initiated now. Looks like they're going to start to burst this one down. Sobuk on the right-hand side still. This will be a 4v5. And it looks like Leviathans have just given up on contesting that Gold Fury as Titans extend their lead to 4,000.
Sometimes you just have to pick your poison, and in this circumstance, the Leviathans understand no one's going to be brawling with a level 16 Vamana, much less one that has Stone Cutting, Void Shield yet again. Such an aggressive, impactful build here for Benji, and he's not done with Shinto just yet. Shinto actually going to lose his Purification Beads and the Erlong taunt to boot. Benji with the 2-for-1 special. Drongyu's ultimate expended as well, and Aurora still deep on the chase.
All getting Shinto at a danger as the blue buff drops down. Oxy can't really do too much here as Benji still chasing in. Level 16 on this Vamana, and the Odin Cage drops down. The Phantom used. Still won't keep Panatom alive, though. He used his ultimate defensively earlier to get Shinto out of danger. Great play from Titans on the right-hand side to keep the pressure rolling, though. Yorkor on the left. Going to try and continue to pressure and get that tier 1 tower. But Cyclone rotated to mid here and should be able to bring down that tier 1 tower to keep the gold spooling in Titans' favor.
15 minutes, still a little bit too early, even with a full 5-man grouping out of the Tartarus Titans. They understand their power spikes haven't quite reached a we can confidently take Fire Giant for free point of the game just yet. They'll just take their wins where they've got them. Easy blue buff invade for the squad on top of the T1 tower. That's just going to open up even more map pressure, make these rotations from Benji feel even more threatening because it's less space for Shinto to try and fall back to. Same thing for Record. He's honestly kind of been getting away with not having to deal with this baby rage out of Benji, but the moment that Benji decides to shift his target focus, and it probably won't be long until he starts trying to just consistently force out those boars from Hardcore so that he doesn't have them to actually threaten the rest of the Tartarus Titan squad in team fights.
I will say it's kind of tricky of what you really do if you've got a situation like this as Leviathans. Do you put your core back in solo, or do you just do what you did here and not put any pressure on solo at all? The problem is, I think the solo talent pool of the SPL is so potent at the moment. it's very tricky for you to really leave a window like this, because now Benji's got a 4 level. These are level 12s fighting at level 17. It's taken the whole goon squad to try and bring him down, and the big baby form will get him away, even with that cursed Ankh here. A lot invested in the chase still on though from Leviathans. Now looking for the rest of the team. Scary D could be the target. Panitom looking at Cyclone. Cyclone will ult away. Now Scary D isolated, pinned in place, uses his beats and the double dash. Round the back though, Aurora's looming, but so you can see as Artem is starting to rotate in here. Odin ring drop down and Phantom used there to disengage Leviathans for now. Scary double dashes away, Panitom low, and in comes Paul.
Home Sweet Home's gonna take down another one, as Hardcore might have been left into the abyss here. Wild Hunt's gonna come out, but Tusky's not buying him enough time. The collapse is still coming through from Aurora. Benji now back full HP, ready to sprawl it out. And 4 members still alive from Leviathans, but not sure that Tartarus Titans feel it's in their best interest to keep this engagement going. However, Hindu, have to point out, Leviathans still here, and this left-hand side still seems as though Leviathans want more.
But what
they just don't have a way to threaten.
I just don't know what we're after, though, is the real question. I saw the chase onto Titans. It was Benji that got aggressive.
They did force a lot of relics.
Agreed, from Leviathans, but then what do we find out of that for either team? Why does that fight keep going is the real question. What are they going to get? A tier 1 tower on the left-hand side for one of the teams on a victory? There's nothing else on this left-hand side to take. More than anything, it just felt like a skirmish over nothing.
Leviathans were largely just trying to reestablish map pressure in their favor, but there were multiple failed attempts just met by A, the mobility out of the Tartarus Titans, and B, the rotational capabilities of Benji. Benji has honestly just been running this map control so far for both of these teams, and he's just not really left the Leviathans much room, if any, to work with, because we just saw them use just about every cooldown imaginable, and even their cursed Ankh, and yet they still failed to kill this Vamana. So clearly, they can't really afford to expend all of their cooldowns onto Benji, but at the same time, how else are you really meant to kill him?
Completely agree. A lot invested there. As now Shinto looked at in mid lane. Will dash away, stay inside the ghost as long as he can. But the ring drop down keeps him pinned in. The apple was connecting there onto Aurora. Didn't slow down the squad at all. Panitom level 13 in the jungle. Having a rough old time there up against Cyclone and Scary D, who's 18. But Yorko trying to punish Cyclone for his overextension here. Body blocks from Scary D came into play to keep Cyclone alive. And a killing spree now initiated. 4 members again dead of the Leviathans. And Titans start running it down towards the mid lane. Fire Giant could be the option here. After that wave is cleared at the tier 2, it looks exactly where Titans are headed.
Benji's got more than enough left in the tank in order to play zone duty here for the lone standing Croc and Noxiliodon. While he might have an idea of trying to get in with that lurking in the waters, it just doesn't really seem feasible.
I'd have done it.
For a level 15 Sobek.
I'd have done it. What's the worst that could happen?
He dies, and then it's staggered respawn timers, and then the Tartarus Titans siege all the T2s for even more free than what it would have been.
In the waters, sprint on in, hope for the best, make a meme out of it if you win. If you don't win, no one's going to remember it anyway. You know
Fair enough.
No one's going to be upset if Oxy dies there, right? It's going to be more, he could do a hero play that give Leviathan some life.
Possibly.
That's me.
Possibly, but I think Leviathan's trying to play this one as close to the book as possible, and they don't want to use all their Hail Marys up just yet on a potential Fire Giant steal. I think if anything, their best chances really do reside in trying to just defend either the Phoenixes or maybe even look for a bamboozle attempt in the jungle with all 5 members squatted up. We saw them nearly Goon Squad Cyclone spin a couple of times.
Yeah.
So if they're able to find even one pick up against the Tartarus Titans roster, as long as they can keep kind of approaching with the wrecking ball mentality, there is still a chance. It's just a little bit more slim.
Blink from Benji in mid, just all in Yorko, and who's going to stop the big baby? Well, the body block smoke from Panitom there, who's doing a good job of trying to protect his backline, but it's coming at the cost of his life every time so far. That's now 1 and 5 for him as Shinto gets all in by the 3 man of Titans who rotate in too quick. Oxy and Rongyu arrive on the scene. Not a whole lot they can do against this frontline army that's in, and Paul bringing out the house to make sure they know the pressure's still on. All the while, Titans abusing the map pressure they've found. Tier 2 tower on the left-hand side is taken down by Cyclone Spin alongside his teammate in Scary D, and they've already taken down a Phoenix as well. Middle Tier 2 is now the next on the cards unless Titans want to farm some kills.
Unfortunately for the Leviathans, it seems as though that first place in the standings is all but a goner now. Olympus Bolts probably watching this one back at home, a little bit excited, given the fact that Tartarus Titans are now looking to wrap this one up nice and sweet here.
Bit of a weird script though, right? That like Bolts get 2 lucky draws and 2 coaches having to play, and that puts them in first spot. Who wrote that script? That's kind of weird.
I don't know, it seems a little bit odd for you even.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I don't remember putting that into.
Well, so what have we got going for us for tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow's going to be very exciting because everything's going to work perfectly. There's going to be no coaches playing, and we should get 2 3-game sets.
2-3 games.
I don't even remember who's playing tomorrow. If it's Valkyries, I'm lying. Let's just put it that way, because I still think
I was
Valkyries
going to say
are
Valkyries are one of the teams playing.
Okay, yeah. We get at least 1 3-game set, I would say. Maybe 2 if we're
No,
very
you already
lucky.
said it. You call the Valks going game 3. They go the distance.
Cool. Everyone will forget this if I'm wrong, and if I'm right, everyone's going to be like, oh my god, he's clairvoyant. He knows everything that's going on.
How does he do it?
13
Can't
to
keep getting
3.
away with this, by the way.
I don't know. I don't know how I get away with it. 30 to 3 though in this one, and Leviathans came into today in an awkward situation. Julio suspended from play at the moment, and that's forced Oxyladion to come on in for the solo lane, and that's really just allowed you to see how much of a difference having 2 different solo laners can be, and the competitive nature of solo lane this year in SPL is just too much. As Scaredy whittles down the health bar of Panitam, and by whittle I mean just annihilate it in seconds. Yoko and Mongu are just trying to get farm on the left hand side, and Benj is like, guess what boys, I'm the big baby, and no one's going to stop me in this form. The rest of the team is just focusing on Phoenixes. This one's pretty much done.
I hope you saw that, by the way. 370 and auto here for Benji now with the acquirement of that animosity and the Toxic Blade acquisition as well. Meanwhile, the rest of the Tartarus Titans, they're going to be 4-man grouped. Just looking to take out the Titan.
I just want to make sure Oxy lives now. I don't want him to get a death at the end of the game. In we go, Titans, into the throne room here. We expected Game 2 to go a bit quicker from Titans' point of view, and it really did as they grabbed the bull by the horns in this one and take out Leviathans in 2 straight games. No disrespect to for Titans there at all. I think they played as expected from them here today, and Leviathans, a situation that they were thrown to the wolves.
Yeah, I think for sure, though, that Game 2 definitely a little bit more representative of what I had in mind for the Titans in Game 1. But, again, I understand where they maybe wanted to play it a little bit slower out here. Either way, though, clean and concise from Game 2. Benji kind of just had a heyday.
Well, that's it for that one. Titans take it 2-0. After the break, we'll break down the day and tell you what you've got to look forward to tomorrow. We'll see you after the break.
Weekend of 2-0s continues, and this time it's the Tartarus Titans on top of the Atlantis Leviathans. And hey, that ad there does a great job of segueing me into the next point here. Shop.smiteproleague.com, your one-stop shop for all the SPL gear and merch that you could ever need. We've got some sweet stuff there, jerseys, hoodies, all those sorts of things, all available for you at shop.smiteproleague.com. I'm personally a fan of the hoodie there on the left and the t-shirt on the right. Maybe I'll get both at shop.smiteproleague.com.
So I like this one on the left, but I also love this one.
I love everything in the store.
Well,
You
me
should all
too.
go. You should buy all of it. And you know where you could do that, Miff? Shop.smiteproleague.com. There's also some jerseys and stuff there, and Tartarus Titans fans will be happy if they're wearing their jerseys here today, because this is one that we talked about the struggles beforehand. At Smite Pro will have all the reasoning behind that, so make sure to tune in there. But the outcome is that the head coach for the Leviathans played in the solo lane. So I think, Miff, this was always going to be an uphill battle for the Leviathans here today. But I think we saw moments of how you can kind of play around that. Early on in the game, the Leviathans just shifted pressure away from that lane, and they were able to do normal Leviathan things. Eventually, though, that starts to catch up, and I think it's worth giving the Titans their due credit. They played well today. You have to play well to beat the Leviathans. And the Titans were able to capitalize, and they did play well themselves, and so they take the 2-0.
Yeah, to speak to your point, we saw the Leviathans generally try and put that pressure into the long lane, and they looked good around it. They were consistently finding kills. They were finding opportunities to start looking towards invades. But eventually, as you said, it did catch up to them. Despite Oxy not really dying for the first 10, 12 minutes of this game, eventually Benji just passively pulled ahead, as he is the superior soul laner. I'm not going to mince words about it.
I don't think you're going out on too far.
Look, man, you never know, all right? There's going to be people out there like, I can't believe you said that about Oxy. but Benji is better at soul lane than Oxy, and then naturally pulled ahead a couple of levels, and then that started to slowly bleed its way into the rest of the game. A couple of engagements that started to look good for the Leviathans in the long lane had Benji rotating into mid, killing Shinto, and then rotating back over to the long lane and getting the kills there as well, which kind of goes to show Smite is a team game. You need all five of your teammates firing on all cylinders.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
I feel like, and I mean this with all the respect, you're the type of player who's like, all right, I'm going to play out of the jungle, and I'm just gonna slam the opposing 5 members of the team every single time, and my teammates could basically do nothing the entire game, and I'll win.
Well, to speak to your point, Dave,
okay.
There is a difference in that I am Mifflin. No, I'm just kidding. Look, junglers, they're a little bit of an exception to the rule. If you're kind of popping off in the jungle, you can do a little bit more. But at the highest tier of play, when you're playing against either the Tartarus Titans or the Leviathans, you kind of want all 5 of your teammates.
That's a good point. I'm curious. We're going to talk to Paul in a little bit here for the post-game interview. Makes me think about the Baba Yaga, though, and I'll be sure to ask Paul about this. Do you think we start to see a bit of an increase in Baba Yaga priority? I mean, it's definitely, like this week, it's definitely not snuck up on anyone that Baba Yaga's good. This is just another game that Baba's been played in and Baba's looked good in. Do you think more and more teams maybe start to pick up?
I can't say whether or not they will. I can say that I personally hope they do. Every time we see Zhang Kui get locked in, what runs through my mind is, could have been Baba Yaga.
Could have been someone else.
Could have been dealing damage from a range, have CC immunity in the ultimate, just stack items for free and look real good while doing it, but instead you locked in Zhang Kui, so you can have a floating book stand next to you and make your auto attacks look cool. And that's generally what he does.
We're having Scylla round 2 from last year. No, except Scylla actually was doing okay at the time. Zhang Kui still over in his games here in the SPL. Paul, we brought him up, and now we will bring him in. Paul, thanks for sitting down with me after the win up against the Atlantis Leviathans. Look, we've been speculating, and I think we've brought some good reasons to the forefront, but I'll give you the floor on this one. Baba Yaga's looked good, not only in your hands here in this game, but a couple of the other mid laners' hands since the No Boots update went live. What puts her into a competitive spot, and why do you think she's starting to see more play?
Well, there's a couple of reasons why. Firstly, is because she got a buff last patch, and that helped her a lot. Her health shield is really, really, really big now, and so it's really hard to kill her. And on top of that, the no boots removal. You remove boots, you can go straight into stacking your item, so that really helps her out.
Yeah, and I think a player like you, who obviously looks good on that pick, happier for it. I am curious. We saw one game of Hebo last week, I think it was, against the Bolts. You went 6-3-1 in a pretty good performance. Do you think we start to see a little bit more Hebo? I don't know why I'm so caught up on Hebo specifically, but I think you're kind of one of the few guys that maybe I could expect to see play it moving forward. Do you think he's in a bit of a niche spot right now, where every once in a while it might make sense?
Yeah, I'm gonna play the Hebo. What are you doing, man?
Whose
I'm
arm
definitely
was
gonna play. That was Ronnie.
The real question.
That's you'd think it's Aurora, but it was Ronnie.
I was
this time,
thinking.
dude.
You're right.
They're trolling me, dude. Everyone gets trolled here when they do an interview.
Well, the problem is you trolled him in the pregame, right?
That's okay. That's fair. That's fair. Hebo, yeah, Hebo's good. The buff he got was really nice. So before, like, his water cannon would literally do as much as an auto attack, and so they raised the base damage a little bit on that. So he can actually play the game early game now. So if you really like Hebo, you'll definitely like. If somebody really likes the character, you will see it being played.
Moving forward, you guys got Valkyries next, and the Oni Warriors after that. You're coming off a win, of course, against the Leviathans. Do you think now the next couple of games is a time where we'll start to see some momentum built up with you guys? You figured some stuff out today, and hopefully you'll get some more wins up against the Valkyries and the Oni Warriors.
Yeah, I think we'll do good. We've been playing better as a team. Like, as the Bolt set, like, we were so close to winning, and we kind of threw it. So I think things are definitely looking up for our team.
What are the next steps here for this Titan squad? What are you guys focused on as far as prep moving forward? In the pregame, I asked Scary D, and he was like, it's just consistency. Do you tend to agree with him on that?
Yeah, I'd say we just gotta be a bit more consistent, because, like, to be honest, like, when we go into game day, like, before it was kind of like a 50-50 if we'd be good or not, and so now I think maybe we're a bit better, maybe 60-40 now.
There you go.
I was kidding. Maybe a bit higher.
Here, I'll give you some homework. You work on the consistency and your interviews, and we'll be off to a good spot. Actually, it's not. And to be clear, it's not you and your interviews. It's the trolling and all that. I think there should be more of it. I think more of that is definitely good. Paul, thanks for sitting down with me. Congrats on your win.
Thanks.
I forgot. Maybe it was. I think Dan edits on Twitter tweeted this earlier on. There's something about me and my interviews over the last 3 days where everything just kind of gets chaotic. That was probably the tamest interview I've had over the last couple of days. One stray arm making its way into frame is the most casual interview I've had over the last couple of days. Paul expressing some confidence, though, and I'm glad we got to hear about a couple of the more specific picks there from Paul. Miff, it was a quick day here in the SPL. It was a quick weekend so far, Friday and Saturday. All 2-0s across the board. Camelot Kings started off with a 2-0. Olympus Bolts, Jade Dragons, and the Tartarus Titans able to do the same. So you look forward to tomorrow. Titans back in action. They'll have the Valkyries. I asked Paul if he thought that was a matchup where they can get some momentum going. He seemed to think so. Jade Dragons and the Olympus Bolts, though, standings-wise, there's some implications at foot here, because Olympus Bolts, well, if they haven't lost yet, and the Jade Dragons are starting to build up after an 0-2 start, that's got to be the headliner set of the weekend. Could make waves in the standings.
Man, I'm really excited for that one. I think all the fans at home are excited for the Olympus Bolts up against the Jade Dragons. Worth noting, the Olympus Bolts recently bopped the Dragon Slayers. That's the Solar Scarabs. Solar Scarabs, I got a chance to talk to Lairs. He said that's the only team they're capable of beating is the Jade Dragons. And
it's not a bad team to beat.
If you got to beat one of them, right, might as well be the playoff champions.
Yeah, why not? Olympus Bolts still 4-0. They're going to go up against the 2-2 Jade Dragons to round out the weekend. Tartarus Titans also 2-2. Valhalla Valkyries still looking for their first win. Early thoughts, though, on that matchup, Dragons against the Bolts. I think all of us predicted Bolts, if I'm remembering correctly, and then Aggro plus Community were the lone couple that ended up going towards the Dragons. In reality, because I think it's worth mentioning, I think it'll be close, right? I think that has all the markings of what could be a 3-game set. Do you think, though, the Bolts are still playing just more consistently at the moment? Bit of a coin flip, but going off recent history, it's maybe the Bolts.
Yeah, what have you done for me recently? I think the Bolts have done a little bit more. If I had to give it direct odds like a bookie would, if I were a betting man, and I'm not and I won't, but I'd say probably 55% going towards the Olympus Bolts here, just due to the raw consistency that we've seen from them. If the Dragons win Game 1, I'm predicting a 3-game set. If the Bolts win Game 1, I'm predicting a 2-game set.
Interesting. So Mifflin, Caleb, I'm not a betting man. Mifflin Sullivan with some predictions there for the Bolts versus the Dragons. That'll be our final set of the weekend, so make sure to tune in tomorrow. But on behalf of myself, DJ minus 90K, all the other casters, everyone back in production, thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Peach it?